What's up, guys? This is Mike from Two Business Review, and guess what? Today we are concluding the second division for my NFL record predictions for all 32 teams. So far we've done 7 teams, and we've predicted their wins and losses, their whole entire record for the NFL season coming up. We finished the NFC East, and today we conclude the NFC North by predicting the Minnesota Vikings. Make sure you guys are all dropping some subscriptions on this channel. It helps out a lot. We'll keep rolling out some important content for you guys. Make sure you go check out the previous NFC North predictions, so you'll see if the Vikings record is good enough to win the division or maybe not. So with that being said, before we predict game by game every single win and loss for the Minnesota Vikings, let's talk about what the Vikings did in the offseason to improve or maybe not improve. So the first thing I want to talk about with the Minnesota Vikings is I think they drafted a hell of a player in the first round of the NFL draft. So Justin Jefferson kind of slid a little bit, and honestly, he slid right into the Philadelphia Eagles' lap, and the Eagles could have easily snatched him up. Instead, the Eagles went for the home run steal, and they swung for the fences, and they drafted Jalen Reagor to be the next Tyreek Hill. It's going to be interesting to see if they strike out on that pick, or maybe it is a home run. So with that being said, the Minnesota Vikings drafted wide receiver Justin Jefferson. He's a high-volume target guy. He had 111 receptions for 1,600 yards receiving in college, 18 touchdowns. So in LSU, he thrived on the receptions that he received from Joe Burrow. And he's definitely a high-volume guy. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays into the Minnesota Vikings offense. Now, he's kind of replacing Stefon Diggs, but he's not the same kind of player. Stefon Diggs was kind of a downfield, stretch-the-field kind of threat, and Justin Jefferson might not be able to provide that. Justin Jefferson reminds me of Alshon Jeffrey, a big guy, strong hands. So Stefon Diggs was traded to the Bills for a first-round pick, which they used for Justin Jefferson, so it basically was a replacement, and then 3 other picks, whatever. So now their wide receivers are Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and some Randy. So they literally only have 2 strong wide receivers, and they'll have to develop a third. Maybe they found someone else in the draft as well. Or maybe they have some breakout candidate already on their roster. So that's the wide receiver room. Kirk Cousins' stats in 2019 were not the best. They were pretty bad, actually. So his stats in 2019, 3,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, and a 69% completion percentage. So some people try and defend Kirk Cousins. 2019, he had a bad year. It's common sense, but also some people call him a bad quarterback, and I disagree because if you look at his yards through the last 5 years, they go like this, and the first one is 5 years ago, and then 4, and 3, and 2, 1. So last 5 years, his passing yards 4,200, 5,000, 4,000, 4,300, and then 2019. He definitely slipped a little bit and only had 3,600. So Kirk Cousins did not have his best year last year. Obviously, he still had the Vikings do pretty well in 2019. So it's going to be interesting to see how Kirk Cousins is able to boost his game this year and maybe have the Vikings do a little bit better in 2020. All right. So the last point I want to talk about for the Minnesota Vikings is their defense. In my opinion, I don't think they have the best defense. So obviously last year Xavier Rhodes was getting torched, and it was kind of just bad for Vikings fans. But if you look at their defense, their only headlining players they got Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, and Michael Kendricks. The first 2 are pretty solid, and then Michael Kendricks is a decent guy. And then it's garbage cans on defense, so that's going to be a concern for the Minnesota Vikings heading into this season. So with that being said, I say we just go right into it and predict the Minnesota Vikings schedule. Week 1, the Vikings play the Packers, and this is a home game, so they start out at home in Minnesota in 2020. And I believe for that reason, the Minnesota Vikings will beat the Packers. I think that the Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love pick, similar to how Drew Brees is dealing with New Orleans right now, that they probably have a similar situation in Green Bay, just because Aaron Rodgers might be, after he said that he might be leaving the team, he said that he was unhappy and he could see himself ending his career somewhere else. I think that the locker room might be a little tense over there in Green Bay, and I can't see Green Bay coming to Minnesota to beat them week 1 of the season. So the Vikings start off pretty solid, 1-0. Next up, Vikings play the Indianapolis Colts, and this time it's their first road game of the season. They play the Indianapolis Colts away, and honestly, I think the Colts are going to be a pretty solid team this year. They got Phillip Rivers. Obviously, Phillip Rivers, if I was him, I'd be pretty happy because he didn't have his best season last year, but he gets the blame on the Chargers' offensive line. Not this year in 2020. 2020, Phillip Rivers is going to have a strong offensive line with the Indianapolis Colts. Quentin Nelson's going to be headlining it. He got Marlon Mack, another strong running back from the draft. T.Y. Hilton's a pretty good threat. I can't see Phillip Rivers having too much to complain about in Indianapolis. Their defense needs some work, though, and I think that the Vikings are going to be able, week 2, to offensively outscore the Indianapolis Colts and take the win away. So Vikings 2-0. Next up, the Vikings play the Tennessee Titans in Minnesota, and I believe that home field advantage in this game is going to be key. I do think Derrick Henry is going to be able to kind of torch this Minnesota Vikings defense, but maybe Daniel Hunter and Harrison Smith, maybe they have a few strong safety blitzes, and maybe Daniel Hunter has a really good game, 2 sacks on Tannehill, something like that. But yeah, the Vikings are definitely going to have to step it up defensively to contain A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and Derrick Henry. And I see that happening. I see the Vikings starting off 3-0 and beating the Tennessee Titans in Minnesota. Next up, week 4, the Vikings play the Houston Texans in Houston. So I think the Texans are definitely going to be a worse team than they were last year. I believe the record is not going to be over 500, to be honest. If you look at the receiver room, Kenny Stills, Kiki Cutie, and Will Fuller, there's some speed guys, but none of those are really like high target, high reception kind of people, and I think that's going to hurt them. DeAndre Hopkins, just DeAndre Hopkins. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think that Deshaun Watson, he's always getting abused offensively with the offensive line. I think he was the most sacked quarterback in 2019, so pretty sketchy there. But I believe the Vikings will dominate this game. Vikings are going to start off really hot. They'll be 4-0 to start the season off. So after that 4-0 stretch, they got a tough little stunt on their schedule. So next up, they play the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Chris Carson. That Seattle offense, I think, is going to be scary. And I think if they're more pass aggressive this year in 2020, that team can be really solid. The thing that I was kind of questioning in 2019, the Seattle Seahawks ran the ball a much larger amount of times than other teams. I forget the exact statistic, but I believe they were maybe second or third in running percentage in 2019. And I think that when you have the threats that Russell Wilson has, to stretch the field, you got to utilize them some more. So let Russell Wilson throw the ball. Come on now. So I think that Seattle Seahawks will beat the Minnesota Vikings to give them their first loss of the season. Seattle's defense is strong this year as well. So Seattle Seahawks beat the Vikings. Vikings 4-1. Next up, Vikings play the Falcons in Minnesota. I always think the Falcons are going to be an 8-8 team, 9-7, maybe sneaking into the playoffs one of these years. And honestly, this year, I don't see them being horrible, but I don't see them being great just because they lost so many pieces down in Atlanta. So the Falcons actually lost. Let's see, who did they lose? Devontae Freeman, Desmond Trufant, Vic Beasley, Austin Hooper, and yeah, that's a lot of key players in Atlanta that they lost. They do have a strong receiver core with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley though, with Matt Ryan, and they do have a decent offensive line and a decent defense with Grady Jarrett, Dante Fowler, and Deion Jones. And I believe that this will be the first upset I predict for Minnesota. I think the Falcons beat the Minnesota Vikings week 6. It's kind of just a surprise pick. I'm going to have to put it in there. And the Vikings are 4-2. Next up, the Vikings have a rematch against the Green Bay Packers. They obviously beat the Packers week 1. I think that week 7, the Packers they're getting things rolling again. And I believe they come into the Vikings coming into Green Bay. They're going to lose this game. They're going to split with the Packers in the 2019 season. And the Vikings are 4-3, and they have a 3-game losing streak. Next up, Vikings play the Detroit Lions. Make sure you guys check out my Lions record prediction video, just because some of you might think that this Lions prediction is not going to be that the Lions are just going to be an automatic win for all these teams. I actually think the Lions are going to be contenders, and I definitely stated that in my Lions prediction video. The Lions actually have a really good offense. Kenny Golladay had 1,200 receiving yards. He had Amari Cooper stats last year. Kenny Golladay did, and that was with Matthew Stafford being out some of the year. They drafted Jeff Okudah and DeAndre Swift, both solid draft picks, and they signed Desmond Trufant to replace Darius Slay. So I could see the Lions being really a contender this year, but I believe that in Minnesota the Vikings will get this win in the first of their matchups. Vikings 5-3. Next up, the Vikings play the Chicago Bears in the middle of their season, and it's in Chicago. Now, I'm giving the Vikings this loss against the Chicago Bears. Let me tell you why. I believe Nick Foles is in at this point in the season. I believe that Mitchell Trubisky starts off the year, maybe has a giant losing streak to start the year off. Maybe they'll lose to the Panthers, week 6? The Bears might lose to the Panthers week 6. And then, down in Chicago, Matt Nagy's like, all right, that's enough for Mitchell Trubisky. Nick Foles, you're in. And then I believe Nick Foles works his magic against the Vikings and pulls off the win. Nick Foles to Allen Robinson is the same thing as Alshon Jeffrey. Honestly, they're both big guys. And I believe that they're going to have a strong connection down there. I also like their running back room. I know they got David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. So strong offense down there in Chicago, and then Khalil Mack on defense. The Bears get this win against the Vikings in Chicago, and the Vikings are 5-4. 5-4. Vikings looking to win their division somehow. They need a big stretch of wins, and I think they're going to get that. So next up, they play the Cowboys. Luckily for the Minnesota Vikings, this game is in Minnesota. I think it's actually going to be one of the most intriguing matchups of 2020, and I believe that both of these sides match up evenly. I give this slight nod to the Cowboys offense over the Vikings defense, but I give the strong advantage to the Vikings offense over the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense is full of Randys this year. It's literally they're starting cornerbacks. I know they drafted one of these guys. They got Trayvon Diggs and then Chidobe Awuzie. There's two starting corners, two Randys. Down in Dallas, they do have a really strong defensive line, though. It's kind of annoying, actually. Their defensive line is DeMarcus Lawrence, Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe. Both of those are new additions, and then Tyrone Crawford. I do think that besides the defensive line, the Cowboys' defense is going to be lacking in 2020, and the Vikings get this win, and it looks like they're 6-4 now. Next game on the schedule, the Vikings play the dumpster fire Carolina Panthers in Minnesota. I think the Carolina Panthers have potential to be one of the worst teams in 2020. I just don't think that they're going to be that great. If you look at they lost their whole defense. They lost Eric Reed, they lost Kyle Allen obviously on offense. They lost James Bradbury, Mario Addison. They lost Gerald McCoy, lost Greg Olsen, lost Dontari Poe. But they replaced those two defensive linemen. They got Derek Brown, 7th overall, and they got a steal in the draft, one of the sleepers. They got Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State. He's a really good player. But their first 7 rounds of the draft were all defense. They went defensive tackle, defensive end, safety, cornerback, safety, defensive tackle, cornerback. 7 rounds of all defense. The Panthers are trying to fill up holes on defense, and it's not going to work. Offensively, I do think they have a decent offense. I like the receivers, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, and obviously McCaffrey, 1,400 yards running, 1,000 receiving. Really strong offensive player. But I think their defense is going to be their weak point, and the Vikings win this game with ease. So with that, the Vikings are 7-4. Next up, they play the Jaguars in Minnesota again. And like I said with the Panthers, same reasoning here. Jaguars could be the worst team in 2020. It's gonna be interesting to see if they get a win. Why would you trade Nick Foles, Super Bowl MVP, for a 4th round pick, which is basically nothing, and then put your faith in Gardner Minshew, garbage can Minshew, Minshew mania? He's not gonna win you games, so have fun tanking just to get Trevor Lawrence, even though Nick Foles was already an established player in the NFL. Vikings win this game against the Jaguars. Probably going to be an embarrassment. Easy win. 8-4. Next up, I think the Vikings get one of their toughest wins of the year in Tampa Bay. I believe the Vikings go in there, upset Tampa Bay. Who knows what the Bucs record is going to be at this point in the season. I think they'll be solid, but I think that it's definitely going to be an offensive shootout. But the Vikings do have a better defense than the Buccaneers. That's why I give them the slight nod. Next up, Vikings play the Bears, this time in Minnesota. Unfortunately, the magic of Foles does not strike twice against the same team. And obviously, do I even bring up what Nick Foles did to the Vikings in the playoffs with the Eagles? He put up like over 30 points. It's actually so funny thinking about that. So obviously Nick Foles dominates the Vikings, but I believe that, this late in the season, Vikings are 8-4 at this point. They're looking to extend their lead in the division. I think that the Vikings beat the Bears right here and become 10-4. So big win for the Vikings. And then they finish their season off with 2 tough games. At New Orleans to play the Saints and at Detroit to play the Lions. Now guess what? They're 10-4. They could be going for first seed, but they could have to clinch the division. And guess what? They lose both of these games. Traveling to New Orleans, no easy deal. No, we already brought up Nick Foles against the Vikings in the playoffs. But Vikings at Saints, no Minneapolis miracle this time. Saints beat the Vikings in New Orleans. Saints could have one of the best records in the NFL this year. They have such a good trio on offense with Thomas, Breeze, and Kamara. To finish their season off, they're going to lose to the Detroit Lions. Like I said earlier in this video, I can't see the Vikings not splitting with the Lions. The Lions are such a strong team this year. I don't think a lot of people are sleeping on them, but the Lions are my pick for the 2019 Tennessee Titans. The Lions are the new Cinderella story. So with that being said, make sure you guys subscribe. Thanks for watching this video. And next up is the NFC South.